Always hated that part of the business. All right, it's that time again. Time for the solo overnight in the woods. And as promised, we're rolling old school. 1997, U.S. Marine Corps, baby. Let's get to it. Always hated that part of the business. All right, so here we are, as promised. We're going to do a solo overnight using the old school military gear from the year 1997. The first 2 years I was in, 95 to 97, this is the gear that we were issued and the gear we rolled with. From 97 or late 97 till 99, the gear changed, and then it changed again in 2000, 2001 to that new MOLLE system. So we're going to focus on 1997. And as mentioned last week, this is not a video on the gear you carried in your unit. This is not a gear on what I should be carrying or what you think I should be carrying. This is a video on what we carried and what we slept with in the field, or in our case here, the woods. Now, if you missed last week's video, it was 100% gear dump. Some saw the gear dump and they refused to watch. Others weren't notified. So if you haven't seen it and you want to be informed on what I'm carrying on my person, on my body, as well as in my pack, please check out that video. Here's the thumbnail right here, and this is what it looks like. And that, ladies and gentlemen, right there is what I do not miss, is carrying 80 to 100 pounds of crap. I'm already covered in sweat after like 10 minutes. So anyway, here's what it is. So, like I said, if you missed that video and you have tons of questions on this video, go back and watch that video. It's right there. And one thing I gotta say, for those that keep hitting me up week after week saying I wasn't notified. For 4 years, I've dropped videos on Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So if you haven't caught on to that, or it's not important enough, then you're gonna continue to miss. On that note, let's go ahead and dig into this bag and get our shelter halves out. I brought 2 of them, one for me and one to simulate a buddy that brought his. We're gonna go ahead and join them together and set up our camp for the night. So as promised, we have our military issue isomat. My mistake was I thought it was going to be new, but it's well used. But there's still life in it, so it's always a plus. So here we go, we have 2 shelter halves. There's set 1 and set 2. Set 1 is well used. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Set 2 is newer. Probably got about 3 or 4 uses out of it. We have our 3 tent poles that make 1 pole for one side, and we have 6 tent stakes in our canvas shelter half. On set number 1, we have 3 poles. However, we're missing the nipple cap right there that slides inside. Why is that? Because most of the time, we had broken stakes just like that, and we were told to make it work. And that's where the infamous electrical tape or duct tape or 100-mile-an-hour tape comes into play. We're also missing a tent stake, and most of the time, you had to deal with it. Now, truth be told about the tent stakes, you actually only need 5 per half. There's 3 tie-outs along the sides, 1 in the front, 1 in the back. It gives you a total of 10, 5 and 5. The extra 2 were given in the event that you have a large bow where your tent poles are here, and the ridge actually bows like this. You can actually take it and attach guy lines to it and pull it to bring it up where it's actually horizontal. The important thing is here, you want to align these snaps in the correct spot and make sure you don't miss any, and then snap this bad boy up. The downside to these is if you had one that was, say, 10 years old and one that was brand new, from water stretching it out and sunlight, sometimes the snaps were like one off and it made it look all messed up. It's always a pain in the butt. We're going to hammer our stakes in with our E-tool. All we did was fold it down and tighten it up. It becomes a hammer. Folding it like this, it's now a pickaxe or an NCO seat, which I'll demonstrate here later on. Opening it all the way up, you have an actual shovel or an axe, okay, or a fighting weapon. So we're going to fold it back down and tighten it up. Here's the downside. Smacking this against your aluminum stake sounds like this. Now, someone's going to say it. I wouldn't make noise. I'd go out there and get a log. No, you wouldn't. You do exactly what you're told to do. An individual gets the entire group or unit killed. And here's the reason why we use these on this. If you're in a forward area or you're behind enemy lines, one, you're not carrying a shelter half. Two, you're not setting up camp anywhere. This is for a base camp area. You're safe. You're surrounded by artillery. Helicopters are flying overhead. Patrols are out. You got artillery over here that will fire 5 to 20, 30 miles away. You're perfectly safe. You're in a base camp environment. And that's what this is for. This is your home at base camp. When you come back from your patrols, you'll camp inside here. And that was the whole point of this since the 1920s all the way up till 1997. There's an easy way and a hard way to set this tent up. Some think put the poles in and stake it out. And that could work. But what happens is you get that bow that we're talking about. Most of the time you're going to get that, but it's actually worse doing it like that. The easier way is to take a tent stake, place it into both of those holes. We only staked out one side. That side is not staked. We're going to rotate this over one full length. What that does is it accounts for the length of the poles that are going to pop up. When you stake it out, it should be almost perfect. You got two choices here. You can loosen your stake up over there and snap all this together, and then take your loop and simply put it over top of the other loop with the stake that's already in the ground, or leave it as is and take your door flap and open it up. Right here we have an example of an internal guy line, that white canvas rope right there. If I put that flap over top of it, you wouldn't see it. On the back, I left it exposed so you can see the difference. In my unit, back in the 90s, we had to run them on the inside, so when you closed your shelter up and you left, that white couldn't be seen. Make sense? Also, using the guidelines from the before and after photos, you can actually see the ridge line is almost straight. That's as straight as we're going to get it. The top is a little bit higher on this end because the ground slopes. And that's the one thing about the Marine Corps back then compared to how I teach bushcraft now. Bushcrafting and camping, you have your 5 W's when you select a campsite. In addition to that, you want something that's flat and level to facilitate water runoff. Back then, they didn't care. They said, you're all going to camp right here. This is where you're going to be. And you made it work. So pretty much as tight as you're going to get it. And we have the option of closing the door or leaving it open. There's your exposed guideline. From the 90s till now, I guess, well, looking at this, it's not that bad. I mean, at least these things are intact. Most of the time you would get them issued to you and you didn't have them. I went to AutoZone back then and got green, the elastic bungee cords. It would attach it to the bottom of my pack because in our unit, you had to be on the bottom. On the top, you have your straps, whatever. But to keep this together, I ran a bungee cord. And if you notice, somebody else did the exact same thing. Those lines right there is a bungee cord being wrapped around and connected. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that came from my era. I mean, I got it from a guy in California, and 29 Palms is right down there, so who knows? That'd be crazy. What if, what if this came back to me after all these years? That would be insane, dude. That's a mind bender for you. Things like that have happened. There was a guy in Vietnam that, I remember hearing a story that he was out there with his buddy and he got shot in the head, actually like saved his life, and the helmet got knocked off his head and rolled over to some area where they were at. They managed to escape. Well, years later, the guy went back to that LZ. I forget what LZ it was, where they were fighting. And he was walking one of the reporters around, and he said, hey, man, right over here is where it was at. And they found a slight indentation where, to them, a foxhole would have been. And they were messing around, moving stuff, digging around. And the dude found a helmet that had a bullet hole dent in the side of it. And he was like, dude, and took it back to his buddy. So, I mean, stuff like that, you know, crazier things have happened. So now we're going to go ahead and create our taco or our burrito lightweight sleeping bag. All that is a military issue poncho and our poncho liner or whoopee. We're going to simply take our tie outs, feed them into our grommets, and tie them out. Then take it, stuff it inside there. To be honest, we're not going to need this. It's about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, overcast skies, no sun, and probably about 95% humidity. I'm just full of sweat sitting here. It is insane hot. Yeah, it sucks. But probably not worse than, you know, Thailand, Okinawa, Japan, or Louisiana. And then we just fold it over, and then you have the option of buttoning it up like a sleeping bag. There you go. So the infamous Menu 10 Chili Mac, one of my personal favorites, ravioli being the other one. And I don't know if you can hear that or not, but there's the rain, which is actually a good thing because it wasn't supposed to rain. If it does rain, then we can test out that cotton canvas shelter half for what it's actually worth. Now, if I get this thing opened, I really don't want to cut the sleeve. I want to open it up. There we go. The reason why is because in our bushcraft survival world, we now have a sleeve that we can collect water if we need to, or rainwater, and then we can go ahead and disinfect it by boiling. Let's see what we got inside here. Pretty much the only things I really care about are the main meal, the chili mac, our infamous vegetable crackers, and then the number one by far best thing in there is the jalapeno cheese spread. So this is going to be our dinner right here. The biggest disappointment of that entire thing is back in my era. And I have no idea when they stopped it. If you know, let me know. But the first time I was in, 95 till 99, and then early 2001 when I got called back, we had small bottles of Tabasco. And what occurred was they lost the contract and wanted to do something cheaper. So they started putting in crushed red pepper, which, again, that's a disappointment. This sucks. It's not good. However, if you know when that stopped, hit me up and let me know, just for random dumbass information, just so I know. In the morning, we'll have some coffee and that poppy seed lemon pound cake. So we'll save that for breakfast. See, one thing that's different is back in my day, we didn't have the perforations here on the sides to open it horizontally. We had to take a knife, pocket knife or K-bar, and cut them. And then somebody wised up and it's like, it's easier to get access to if we just do this. And so it probably caught on, you know, over time. And that's my pet peeve. If you're going to 2.0 something or you're going to improve it, say it's evolution, then it needs to be easier. If it's more convoluted, then it's not evolution. We're going backwards. Dude, that smells exactly the same. Wow. So we're going to add our jalapeno cheese. And then we're going to add our crushed red peppers. Look at that. Even this stuff smells exactly the same. Wow. Get that all mixed around in there. Ooh, man. Tell you what. Damn, Jimmy. That's some gourmet shit. Tell you what. All right. Again, the biggest disappointment. The Tabasco would go down nice with this. These are exactly what they say they are. Looks like the peppers for a pizza. Give it that kick. And look at that. Completely intact. Let's break this thing up. And we have our cracker spoon. Excellent. Still needs that Tabasco. Get you all in the pew. We talked earlier about an NCO seat. We folded it in the shape of our hammer to drive our stakes in. All we're going to do now is turn it into the same configuration we would for a pickaxe. And then take our pickaxe configuration, invert it, and sit. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the evening, other than just hunkering down and get through the night. With how hot it is, we're not doing a fire. Two reasons. One, we're doing an authentic overnighter with the gear. In previous videos where I used some of the gear, we had a fire. But in the military, in the infantry, you're not lighting fires for anybody because obviously they're going to go, oh, look, they're right there. And so you didn't do it. So we're not going to do that. In the morning, we'll use our heat tabs that I showed you last week, warm some water up, have coffee, eat our pound cake, talk about some stuff, and get her done. Speaking of talking about some stuff, I'll answer a couple of questions. Somebody asked me, well, actually it's about 10 people that asked me, but the one I'm referring to asked a question along the lines of, being that I have the old school gear, would it be possible for me to teach old school military tactics? And they were addressing it like if I taught the old stuff, YouTube wouldn't have a problem with it because it's outdated, it's older. And here's my answer. No, I'm not going to. And the answer for me is in several parts. I'll give you two of those. The first one is no, because of YouTube. Whether it's old, outdated tactics or not, it's still considered a no-no. In my era, let's think back to movies, and the number one movie that I can refer you to from what I was taught is 1995 Heat with De Niro and Val Kilmer and Al Pacino. There's a scene, once they come out of that bank, they're spotted. Boom. There's, I believe, 3 of them come out of the bank, 4 of them. They hop in a car and they go. Well, the tires get blown, the driver dies, they bail out of the vehicle, okay? And last week's video we talked about shoot, move, communicate. And I showed how to drop to a knee and change magazines out while somebody else was shooting. The best representation of my era for the buddy rush for shoot, move, and communicate is watching that scene where they yell, go, and they're spraying, boom, 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 boom. The guy moves, he starts firing, yells, go. He picks up and moves. And they're moving towards the police officers, moving towards the fire to get to another vehicle or to get out of there. And that's basically what the Marine Corps did back then. 2024, I couldn't tell you. So where am I going with this? I'm not going to teach tactics because it worked back then and it worked since World War II. I don't want to show that for the obvious reasons. Right now we're hanging on by a thread and barely paying bills. I'm not going to give YouTube any reason to demonetize or play more games with me to where it's just not worth it. So the second part is, of that question, my answer, my second part of the answer, is most, not all, but most people I've seen on YouTube that start teaching tactics, it's because they failed doing bushcraft and survival. And that's not being derogatory. A lot of channels, they jump in, they last 2 or 3 years, and they're trying to get established. They're getting 200 views on videos, and they work their way up to a couple thousand views, and they're just not being accepted. They're not getting there. So they default to military tactics, and they become one of two things, a doomsdayer or a podcaster. And it's usually doomsday podcasting and escape and evade and get away from the government and do all this stuff. And it lasts about 2 or 3 years at most. YouTube catches on because they always talk about the government, talk about military, escape and evade, they always show firearms. And what happens is their channel becomes demonetized. Then they put out a big video, boo-hoo for me, I'm demonetized and I can't figure out why. Well, the obvious reasons why is because you're violating tons of YouTube rules and standards. I know there's Second Amendment and First Amendment, but YouTube doesn't know that. And unfortunately, that's how it works. So, long-winded answer, but no, I'm not going to go down the road of start teaching military tactics. I toyed with Patreon for a while in doing something like that, but one, you got to pay for it. Most can't watch for free. And two, at some point, I'm sure Patreon would have a problem with that. Or somebody would and complain, and then, just it would start going downhill from there. So, again, my answer is no. I apologize. Just to get an idea of what you're looking at, the poles are the center point. We have about 3 foot from that pole to that corner. Now behind me is an example of what's in front of me. From my head, I got about 2 feet over here, as well as over there. So you're looking at 9.5 to 10 feet of space on one side. Exact same things over here. So there's more than enough room for your gear. A partner, their gear. If you're rolling by yourself, I mean, you got room to cook over here if you had to in a rainstorm. Extra space to do whatever you need to do. take care of small tasks. You can actually sit up in this shelter. So back in the day, I mean, these things were around since early 1900s all the way to late 90s. And I mean, other than the weight, which is a problem nowadays, I mean, it's one of those things where it's quality gear that was made and it lasts your lifetime. So it's always cool to get out and try this stuff and just use it and see how it was, you know, compared to what you have nowadays. On that note, I'll catch you all in the morning. So while we're waiting for that water to warm up, we go ahead and dig into the pound cake. Wow, smells nice and fresh. It actually tastes good too. Mm, yeah, wow, that's actually good. Get you all in a few. Bill's Brew, freeze-dried coffee. There we go. Okay, so while we're enjoying our coffee, I want to talk real quick about military gear. Military surplus nowadays, from what I showed you, it's military surplus. It's no longer being used unless it's for some type of off-the-wall training. It's no longer being issued. It had its time, had its place, and it got the job done. But if you want to roll old school, all right, so the key is old school, vintage old school, and you want U.S. military gear, then there's no substitute for U.S. military gear. If you say, well, I can buy this stuff over here in Italy, or I can buy this stuff over in Russia, and I can have this butt pack put on here, that means you're just swapping out gear, and you're doing whatever you want to do. If it looks cool, great. But to have that authentic look, it needs to be authentic. Because at the end of the day, all you're doing is fooling yourself and looking stupid. And with the prices nowadays, you can find this stuff, mix and match it pretty cheap at thrift stores, online auctions. eBay is a good one, and even Amazon. So once again, if you're going to roll old school and you want that old school vintage look, accept no substitute. All right, so what else is going on here? The Etsy store is open. And once again, my Etsy store is open. And what's in there this week? We have a bunch of brand new gear with tags from Helicon Text. You want to go check that out. We got a backpack in there. I think we have one of those chest rigs. We have a couple pouches. We also have a bunch of knives in there. Some stainless steel, some carbon steel. What else we got going on? We have our standard meat forks. Our patches are in there. Our regular forks are in there. And week by week, I'm going to add more and more gear to that to get rid of it. Like I said, I have tons of gear, and just probably 7 to 10 items a week we're going to dump in there. And I enjoyed it for years, and now you guys get an opportunity to enjoy it as well. Coming up here next week, I'm doing my final test run on the Corporals Corner cold handle skillets. And we have the actual legit cold handle skillets that are going to be in there as well. So look forward to that. And then in the future, about 2-3 weeks, we got more cup and bottle sets coming. So there's a lot of gear coming here. And then once we hit fall, I got something else in store for you guys. So look out for that. But once again, the Etsy store is open. Go to my video description box, click on that bad boy, and get her done. In the meantime, we have our midweek videos that are dropping between Wednesday and Thursday-ish. If you're missing those, then you're missing good free info. On that note, let's get out of here. With that, all the gear in my videos can be found on 2 places. 1, my Amazon affiliate page, and 2, my Etsy store. Both links are found inside my description box. Now please do me that favor. Hit that like and subscribe button, then ring that notification bell. Once you ring that bell, please select all notifications. And as always, thank you for your comments, views, and support. Thanks for watching. Get out in the field, have some fun. I'm going to catch you next time.